First of all, Jeff, on behalf of Archway and the board, this is really an incredible opportunity to talk to you about your story. And, the first thing, we're all here to support the kids in recovery. Archway is a program. We all know and have been told how incredible the program is, but really today is an opportunity for you to live out loud, to tell us a little about your story and why you're here today to just share. So I just want to give you an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about your background, what's happened, and what got you to this seat today.
Well, I am Jeff, and I am an alcoholic. You know, addiction, whether it's drugs or alcohol, it is just a challenge, put it that way. It's the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my life. To have no control over yourself, where alcohol for me controlled my life, where wake up from the morning to whenever I went to sleep, it was all about where was my next drink. And to think about that, it's, we talk about baffling and cunning the disease, and it's hard to explain to people what your life looks like. They can see what it looks like, and generally the whole thing is, well, you need willpower. You should just be able to stop. It's just not the way it works, and it's a constant struggle. And I think at times you lose hope, and I think you don't value your life anymore. I mean, I remember looking in the mirror in the morning at 7 o'clock in the morning and saying, "What are you doing, man? You're killing yourself." And still could not stop. Because for me to get through the day, I had to have drinks. It's a very vicious cycle, but it's something that it went through in my life that is, I can honestly say that obviously we never overcome this disease. People say, "Oh, you're a recovered alcoholic?" No, I'm in recovery. I mean, it's always there, and it's always waiting. And for me, I was very, very fortunate to have people around me that loved me and supported me and didn't give up on me. And that's part of the reason why I'm here today, because if they did give up on me, I don't think I'd be sitting here or in any other seat. I would not be alive. So when we talk about Archway, I led a meeting, a Monday meeting and a night meeting, which, generally my meetings are kind of controlled. I know who's in the rooms and all that kind of stuff. And this was kind of like my first time to step out. And I went to this meeting and I saw about 10 to 15 kids on the side wall. And I'm leading this meeting and my whole focus was on these kids. And I'm thinking about how hard it was for me at that particular time to be in that seat, to be sober, to think of what it could be like for these kids. To try and tell kids about sobriety in my life, and yet they haven't even barely started theirs. It was something that was very, very impactful for me. And since then, I've always gone around trying to figure out, and I've asked other people, what do you say to young kids? Like they come up and they look at you and they're like, "What are you doing here?" Like, "You're Jeff Bagwell." I'm like, "Yeah, and I have the same problems you got." But what do you say to those kids? I mean, I've lived half my life, and the struggles that I had, can imagine putting it on a 15, 16, 17, and so on. And it was just something that meant something to me, where it was, how do these kids do that? And what do you say to them? And I think for me, I think what I found out is the best thing is, first I say, "Well, how's your life treating you right now?" And to every single one of those kids, it was not good. And I don't know, those kids could have been there court appointed. Their parents could have just dropped them off there, whatever, but they were there. And I think the biggest thing we want to give the kids is hope. And for all the things that we go through in life, when you're in addiction, the hope is gone. Like, this is who I am, this is my life. And that's where Archway comes in for me. I'm thinking of these kids that have an opportunity to go to a high school with the kids that are their same age, the same struggles, the same stories, and what an opportunity it would be for those kids. And that's basically why I'm here for Archway. And it helps me too, because I feel and I empathize with their struggle. And I can't imagine at that age. So if we give these kids, these parents, an opportunity for a kid to get better and to understand what this is all about, and you can still live a normal life. And it probably, might not be right now, but down the road, they're going to tell you that it's the best life they've ever lived.
Yeah, I remember when we were together, you had just joined the board, and one of the things that we did was the walk the line, right? So one of the things we do is where it's sort of the commonality with the other teachers, with the other board members and the children, and I know that was so impactful to you. Will you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was probably maybe one of the most singular, important things that happened to me, and what Archway, when I went to that, I guess it was kind of a day retreat, and to watch Sasha talk about, have you ever done this? Have you ever done this? So walk back and forth from the line, and I'm kind of just watching. And then she says, have you ever tried to commit suicide across the line? And say there was 70 kids there, at least 65 crossed that line. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, damn. I understand it, and I've heard about it, and people, like I said before, lose hope. And these kids, they've lost hope, or they just don't know enough about the disease. And to watch them walk across that line, to think that they've tried to kill themselves, that is something that really scares me. Because I know, like I said earlier, we look at our life when we're in addiction as meaningless. And these kids are thinking that their life is meaningless enough to take their own life. And Archway's doing something about that. So that was very impactful for me.
Well, and as a dad, right? I mean, you got your daughters. Like, I think one of the things is just to understand how it's affected you. Like, how do you, like, how's your addiction affected your daughters? And, also, like, what have you seen in their lives or their friends' lives around alcoholism and addiction?
As an alcoholic, you always worry about your kids, because obviously it's in your blood. It's not a willpower deal. So you have to be careful. Pray that nothing happens with them. But, they've seen everything on me. I listen to a lot of guys in recovery, and they say, the greatest thing is my kids never saw me drunk. Well, my kids, they've seen the whole enchilada. And it was a very, very difficult time. And I had lost my kids a little bit. When you're an alcoholic, you're like, I don't care, whatever. I mean, that's the worst thing I can't even believe that I thought things like that. And because when you're in your addiction, you don't realize what you're doing. You're only focused on yourself and whatever it is you need, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is. But I ripped my family apart. The good news is I have a support system, and my relationship with my kids now has never been better. My daughters come to me when they have questions. Some things I don't want to talk about, but I was like, you don't need to be talking to me about this, because they're girls. But there's something that happened in my daughter's life. My college student, who one of their friends had a problem with drugs, and she came to me and started talking about it. And she was all mad about, her and her friends were all mad at this girl. And she's telling me what she's doing. I said, yeah, that's addiction 101 right there. I said, you have to realize that it's not about, it's not intended at you. She just can't control herself right now. That's not really her. That's her disease doing her stuff. So I told my daughter, I said, here's your option. You can either forget it and say, I'm not going to be friends with her anymore, or you can show her the most love you can give. Send her letters, talk to her every day, tell her you're proud of her. I said, nobody knows this disease better than you of your friends. So you can do it either way, but be a leader in this, because you know, and you've seen what your father has done. And as I sit here today, I'm sober, so you can see there is another side, and things can change. So that's up to you. And it's been good. And I think when you learn about it as a kid, you start to see your friends, and you say, well, this is going the wrong way, because I've seen my dad like this. So it's tough to talk to them about that, but in the other way, it's wonderful and it's beautiful, because it gives them an opportunity to share with others and to be that, that leader for their friends, and to help a person in distress that they love.
So you've shared about your addiction, and really what I want to just hear about is kind of the support and how you found recovery. So how have the Astros supported you through this, and what's that experience and relationship like?
Well, the Astros, I guess unknowingly, I kind of walked into that deal where I wasn't fulfilling my commitments that I needed to do with them. So I kind of took a break from them for a while. And then once I really got into recovery, like I tried this thing for about 7 or 8 years before this last time. And they've known my struggles. Being me in the public, my not being sober is a little bit more public. So they knew what I was doing. But to be honest with you, they've been unbelievable. I've had talks with Jim Crane and the organization. They've welcomed me back. I have stipulations that I have to remain sober and stuff like that, and not in that wording, but I have to be who I need to be for them. But they've been more than wonderful. They've welcomed me back. And that's one thing in this world that I know about. I know about baseball, and now I know about sobriety and not being sober. So I really embrace my time with them.
Yeah, no, and what an amazing gift that you have now to be able to bring the message, not just to everybody listening today, to kids, but the ability to bring it to ball players, right? And so, like, I mean, I can imagine you're at the top of your game, you're getting the adrenaline rush, and the music stops, right? And so,
That's a tough deal.
Yeah.
You're kind of looking for a purpose in life. At 2:30 in the afternoon, I'm supposed to be at the ballpark, and at 2:30 in the afternoon back in 2006, I'm standing in my living room going, what am I doing? You got a lot of time on your hands. Most guys that are athletes don't have a backup plan after they're done, especially when I played as long as I played. So the identity problem, I think, contributed a ton to my drinking. Now, obviously, I would have been an alcoholic at some point, but I think this facilitated it to go quicker. Or I'm an alcoholic since I was born, whatever it is. To get to where I got really, really bad, I think it was an identity crisis in my life and what my worth was.
I watched your Hall of Fame ceremony, and to me, the thing that stood out is, to a man, everybody that talked about you said, greatest teammate. And then in your speech, you said, all I want to do is be the greatest teammate. And I feel like that box is absolutely checked, right? That's what everybody says about you. And now, the ability to spread that message of recovery and hope is a second act that could be even better. The ability to be a teammate to everybody in recovery. And I know you are that, because I know the people that surround you and love you. And I just want to hear a little bit about your childhood. In your speech, the thing that touched me the most was that moment you had with your dad.
Yeah. I had a great childhood, I think. I don't look back and say, oh my God, I had a tough childhood, which is another reason, like, my message to people is it doesn't matter who you are and what people have childhood, they grow up with alcoholism in their family. My kids can talk about their childhood with me as the alcoholic, but everything was fine, and I was, my parents got divorced when they were 12, which I was happy about because all they were doing was fighting, and they were at every game. They took me everywhere I needed to go. Wonderful parents. My father was he was a tough dad, but I could handle that. It drove me. And my father, he's old school, and I take a little bit of my dad with me as a parent, trying to sift out a little bit of the harshness. But I'm not saying that in any way was he a bad dad. He was wonderful. He was just tough, but it was cool. And so it really didn't matter to me of something to blame alcoholism on, like my parents or my upbringing or anything like that. It's just, that's what I am. In that Hall of Fame speech, like I said earlier, I'm not sober without that, without my parents, without my wife, without my kids pulling for me, other people in the program that wouldn't give up on me. And so I look at myself as very lucky and extremely grateful, because it could have been a lot worse. As bad as it was, it could have been a lot worse. And I just, without without people that surround you, that care about you, love you, that understand you, this is a very difficult thing to deal with. You know, we lose a lot of people to this disease. And my message is to try and lose as least amount as we can.
Yeah, I just want, the one thing is to hear about is, I know you were sober at your Hall of Fame speech. Yeah. And having that experience without the guilt, the shame, the secrets, and being able to enjoy it. What was that moment like?
Well, you know, I was sober at that, but it was a long stretch up till that. And I drank after that at some point too, until this last time in 17. But to have the ability to think and to put a sentence together and to thank the people that have really been there for me, I mean, that's such a gift. And I feel if I did the speech again today, I would be better because I have more sobriety. But to put it together and to be able to go through that sober was wonderful.
So growing up, like, who were the heroes?
Well, my father was a huge Ted Williams fan. We're Red Sox fans because we're all from Boston. And then I became a Carl Yastrzemski fan. So he was kind of my guy. He wasn't the biggest guy in the world. He was always changing his batting stance. He was just a hard worker. So I always loved Carl Yastrzemski. And those were, you know, back when you were a kid back then, your athletes became your idols. And I still, and today I think there still are, you know, but there's social media, there's so much stuff going on. It's not, you know, your household is not always fixated on the Boston Red Sox or for here in Houston, the Houston Astros. But that being said, you know, part of my Hall of Fame speech too was if I brought anything for a family to sit down in front of the TV and to talk about baseball, to talk about whether Bagwell stinks or Bagwell's great, whatever it might be, it brought families together, then I did my job. And I'm proud of that. And I'm happy because that's what my life was. It was my dad and me watching the Red Sox on some fuzzy TV that I'd have to jump on the roof, mess with the antenna to make sure he could get, you know, Channel 6 to watch the Red Sox. But those were times I'll never forget.
That's awesome. Yeah. Who are your heroes today?
Recovering alcoholics. And people would probably say, oh, no, he's just saying that because he's on this video. That is not true. I'm saying that because they are. I've seen people in this program go through some horrific things and remain sober. The people that are in AA and recovery are some of the most genuine people that you could ever meet. Where else can you go somewhere where every single person in the room, no matter where they're from, no matter what color they are, only wants you to stay sober. That's all they care about. It's such an amazing feeling to have people that care. And they don't even barely know you. And it's not because I'm Jeff Bagwell, the Astros. It's everybody. Everybody cares about everybody. And when I watch people, you know, their wives commit suicide or people die that are their closest to them or anything, and they remain sober, I'm like, damn, man. I mean, that's like the hardest thing in the world to think about going through. And they stayed with it. And you know what they're doing? They're talking to me about me. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about me, I want to talk about you. I mean, it's just, it's so impressive, and it's such a shining light on a human being to watch people care about each other. I've always said this, if every single person in the world went to a couple of AA meetings, the world would be a better place.
One of those heroes, Dr. B. He's a guy you and I both love. I want to segue a little bit into baseball. So the question he wanted me to ask you was why you never tried to steal a base.
I never tried to steal a base? No, I stole a bunch. I'm the most proud of that thing in my stats. Yeah. I'm not supposed to be, but I had to do that with my mind because I'm not the fastest guy in the world, but I can understand situations and how they're supposed to be. But that also cost me a problem in my sobriety because I thought I could do it with my mind, and it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, Scott, when I was talking to him before this, he said, you know, just ask him about his stolen bases, because he said that's the one thing that people don't know that you're the proudest of is that effort that was behind it.
Yeah, I'm trying to be a complete player, and I think that's the most important thing is that I can do different things to win baseball games. And a guy that's not that fast to have what I did, I'm proud of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So in the game today, just staying on the baseball subject. So favorite player to watch today?
You know, I think I appreciate everybody. I think I'm the same way in basketball and football. I like to watch athletes play. There's certain kids that are really, really fun to watch. There's some new young kids, like the kid in Atlanta. They do some dynamic. These kids nowadays are big kids, and they have so much talent. They're a little different. You know, they're I guess the millennial age where, you know, they like to be flamboyant and all that. But if I had to pick, like, my favorite Astro, which is all of them, but I mean, I love Yuli. Yuli is one of my favorites. He's one of those guys that when I see him, I smile. He's just a good guy, and I enjoy it. I love all the Houston Astros. I mean, I'm invested in them in person. You know what I mean? We have relationships, so they're fun. So I mean, I don't look at somebody and go, oh man, that guy's great. You know, like easy to say Mike Trout. I mean, he's a great player. I just don't get to see him play that much. I get to see our guys. You know, and I love Altuve, I love Bregman, I love Springer. I mean, I can go down the list. I enjoy people that play the game the right way, and so I just enjoy athletes that do it the right way.
So and when you think back to your playing days, you know, who was that pitcher that you just didn't want to face?
You know, I get that question a lot. I always say the best pitcher I ever faced was Greg Maddux, because every at bat was different with him. He's just cerebral, so you couldn't really pick out exactly what he was doing. Now I faced guys like Kevin Brown. If you're an Astros fan, you might remember him in '98. He was as dominant as it comes. Very, very hard for right-handed hitter. Pedro Martinez was no fun either. I mean, a little guy threw 100 miles an hour. He had no problem throwing one at your head either. But those guys were tough. But you know what? In retrospect, everybody's tough. I mean, it's such a hard game. It's such a hard game to have confidence. All you do is fail. But the great news about baseball is you get to play the next day. So you just got to keep falling down and keep getting back up. Sometimes you get up too high and then you fall straight down again. So it keeps you a little bit grounded.
Yeah. And you know, it kind of feels like, and certainly in my experience, that's the addiction side, except each low is lower, right? And so from your standpoint, I've known you a while, and I've heard the stories about, you know, the guys showing up at your door again. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just picking yourself back up, and what was that moment, that last experience that flipped that switch for you?
Yeah, guys in recovery, I guess what they've told me is we don't shoot our wounded, we don't kill our wounded, whatever. You just keep coming back. And I never understood that thing at the end of the meetings. You know, when you first get in there, you're just all beat up and all that. And you keep coming back, it works if you work it. I'm like, what? But now I get it. If you keep coming back, it can work. And these guys wouldn't leave me alone. They'd come to my house, you know, and I got cameras, and I'm looking. I'm like, oh, I don't want to see them. Tell them I'm not here, and all that. And they know I'm in there. I'm in my guilt and shame. But they kept coming. And you know, you asked me what was the final moment. Only thing I can tell you is God, because I had basically a family intervention again. My kids said, we can't do this no more, Dad. And my wife said it, but they've done that before. And for some reason, it worked for now. I can't say that I never drink again, because I've told that to my kids before and I broke that promise. But for today, I'm not drinking. And the only thing I can think of is that was God. And God said, all right, man, I've given you enough chances. It's time. And then there's certain things throughout the first year or so that happened, especially with my wife, that have kept me on the right path. And that's all God stuff for me. You know, I truly believe that God put her in my life, and really put me in hers. And going through this, I think is part of God's purpose, is for me to do stuff like this, to spread the word, and to show people that it doesn't matter who you are, that this is real, and it's not it's not the back of my baseball card, and it's not money. I can't buy my way out of any of this stuff. I got to put in the work, and thankfully for me, I have a love and support of a lot of people.
Yeah, and I know you've been on the other side of it. Can you share a little bit about seeing addiction in friends and surrounding you, even before your own.
Yeah, I think though, well, yeah, Ken Caminiti, who passed away, he overdosed. I saw his addiction, but I didn't know anything about it. I think being in addiction and being an alcoholic, I mean, I guess you can use those two words together or whatever you want to use them by. Unless, I think society today is starting to come to grips that it is real. It's not the guy on the side of the road all the time. Yeah, it's him, but it's also us. I mean, it doesn't choose who it is. So I watched Cammy go through this, but I didn't know enough about it to help. Like, I'd give anything for Cammy to have to go through that now with me so we could do it together, because we get sober. It's kind of like Archway. Kids have, we have a whole program of kids wanting for everybody to be sober. And to watch somebody go through that, like when Cammy died, I wasn't surprised. Like, I knew it was coming. I didn't expect it to be so soon, but now that I'm in my recovery, I get it, why it comes so soon. So it was devastating, and especially now that I know more about it.
Yeah, and I said this early on, but it's a big decision to be such a big figure in the community, and to not just tell your story, but to broadcast it. I mean, that's a big decision. It's a lot of responsibility. What got you to the point where you were willing to share openly about what you've been through?
I think I went to I've went to a bunch of, well, I've been to the Archway luncheon to listen to people talk. If you go to the Archway luncheon in person and watch somebody speak, you can't, you're just like, holy cow, this is awesome. I've been to the council luncheons with a whole bunch of people around talking. And I remember I turned to my wife one day and I said, I could do that. Yeah. Because I know me speaking about it means a lot. Because there is the stigma of an addict or an alcohol. And I want people to understand it's real. It doesn't matter. You might think that it's only these certain peoples, you just don't know. There's a lot of us around. For sure. Even some that don't want to be one of us. But we don't choose it, it chooses us. And I want people to know that it's okay and there's hope, and you can survive this. And you can, if you do it and live by not drinking or doing drugs or whatever, you can live the best life you've ever had. And it's hard to explain when you say, I walk around with no baggage. My life is an open book, and I'm okay with that. I am who I am, and my past is what it is. But all I can do now is go forward. And that's the message. There's hope. You can go forward. But if you continue on the path that you're on, there is no hope. But if I can get people in the rooms or talk to people, man, that's what I'm about. If I can save one, I can live with that.
It's an incredible story. So when you're in your quiet moments, what do you pray for today?
I generally pray for everybody besides me. I pray for my kids. I pray for health, safety. I pray for others who struggle with this disease, that they can find God. And most important, I thank God for His grace, for giving me the chance to do this. Because if it wasn't for Him, I wouldn't be doing this. And as I told you before, me getting sober this last time is only a God thing. We laugh about it, they say cats have 9 lives. I got 9 desire chips, so I wasn't going to get a 10. So
let's not do 10.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to.
We're good.
I know we're good.
Yeah.
But it's just, I thank Him because it could have went a different way. So I owe Him. And if I look at my life and I think that if everybody looks at their life like us in recovery, I don't think God's let us down. He's given us an opportunity. And then it's up to us to do action and to stay sober and spread the message.
I mean, the gift of the legacy that you can create is such a gift, and the impact that you can have in your message. The two, I kind of want to split up for a second. In baseball, when you think about that moment, what was that moment in your career that you reflect on? You know, biggest smile, biggest moment, maybe something people don't think about you.
Well, people ask me, you know, what is your biggest moments in the game? And I don't know if I bore them or they think I'm full of it, but it had nothing to do with me. I mean, it's part of me. Darryl Kyle's no-hitter. I've never been so happy for another teammate than I was that day. Making it to the playoffs in '97 was great, team thing. Craig Biggio's 3,000 hit was magical, and I cried, and it wasn't even, I was so happy for him because I know it meant so much to him. Things like that, the team-oriented thing, or the individual besides myself. Like, oh, what's the biggest home run you ever? I said, I have no idea. I said, you know, I'm just doing my thing. But when you're doing something and you watch other people being successful, that is the most gratifying thing. Which I'm not saying this just for this interview. That's what spreading the message is when you see it work in somebody else. That's why they're my heroes, because they fight, and that's all I'm looking for.
Yeah, and so where were you when the Astros actually won the World Series?
I was there. I was in LA. You know, it's such a cool feeling. It was, you know, what I tell people, it was one of those bittersweet moments. Like, I was so freaking happy for the guys and so happy for our city, and pissed off that that wasn't me. But it really wasn't about me, but I was just so excited, and what a thrill it is to win something like that in Dodger Stadium. I mean, it would have been better if we did it at home, but the way it happened, that was wonderful.
Yeah, and you have an incredible legacy being enshrined now in the Hall of Fame, but when, I know you differently. I know the humble, quiet, shy Jeff. And now when you look ahead, you know, what do you want your life going forward to be remembered by?
I think it's more that he helped others, that he changed his life around to do something positive, and it had nothing to do with baseball. Baseball might have given me a platform, and that's all part of the story, but that's not the end result. That's just my platform, that people recognize me through that. I want to be a guy that just didn't sit back and say, okay, I'm sober and I'm just going to leave this alone. To understand that going to a meeting has nothing to do about me personally, but it might make somebody else who is on the fence of whether or not to drink, to see me in there and to speak and sit there and go, man, if he can do this, then I should be able to. And to tell people, it doesn't matter what I did for a living. This is real. This is, every human being anybody can get this thing. And you don't know if you don't wake up, you don't start at like 12 and your parents go, just want to let you know you're going to become an alcoholic. That's awesome. It's not something we try, but that's the cards that are dealt to us. And what do we do about that? I mean, all we try and do is help others. That's why the kids are so important to me, is because can you imagine being that age and you do your thing, you do your drugs, drink all that kind of stuff, but to think about, I might have to not do this for the rest of my life. How do I survive that? It's overwhelming. Even as an adult, it's overwhelming. When I was 42 years old, I'm like, you're gonna tell me I can't drink for the rest of my life? If you ain't telling me that, I'll stop for a few months. That's not the way it works. And I just think that the hope and when you first get into recovery, you hear, I'm a grateful alcoholic. Those are the two craziest things you could possibly ever hear when you first walk in. You're gonna tell me you're grateful to be in here. I get it now, because I am grateful alcoholic.
That's great. And so when you think about Archway, the one thing I think about is the parent struggle, and what we really focus on is raising the awareness of Archway. So on behalf of the Archway board, thank you for stepping up. And this is just an incredible moment. I just want you to maybe share a last thought about, to those listening, to those watching today, some of your experience and you shared already some of it, but some of your experience about Archway and kind of what your hopes are to achieve today.
Yeah, that's, the biggest thing about this interview about, we talk about me and people want to hear that stuff and all that, but for me, me, I could care less about talking about me. What I care about is Archway. I think as a parent, when your son or daughter is 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, you start to see signs of, you get in trouble, or they get drunk, they come home, you get in trouble and all that kind of stuff. Then when it becomes, the addiction rears its head, parents don't know what to do. I see parents getting mad, embarrassed, and most importantly, confused. They don't know what to do. So I've seen people get mad, get embarrassed. I've seen people send kids away. Like, go away. Or just, you're a bad kid. No, they're not a bad kid. They're struggling with this disease that is awful, and they can't control it. So what do you do as a parent? Well, Archway Academy gives you a chance to have your kids still around, to send them to a school where there's other kids going through the same situation. When I told you earlier about, 65 out of those 70 kids walk a line about committing suicide. You don't think their parents know they trying to commit suicide? They're scared to death. But we at Archway can give them hope. They can give them a normal life, and you can go through, like, one day, say Billy talks to Bob and says, "Hey man, I'm struggling today." Bob gets it, and they talk about it. Like I said, we get sober. Archway is a we program. We're all in this together because we've all been there. That is such a powerful thing to have when you know you got somebody to count on. And Archway gives you that. And you can live a normal life. And yeah, there's going to be struggles when you get out of school and all that. But it gives you an opportunity to start to understand who you are, what the addiction is, the points that get you to act on your addiction. I just think it's just a beautiful thing, because I think at the end of the day, the kid's scared. He might not act like he's scared. He might act rebellious and all that, but he's scared. In certain moments where you black out or say you OD, all those kind of things. Archway gives you an opportunity for you to have a schedule, accountability to what you need to do as a kid. And you ain't gonna fool anybody at Archway. We get it. We've been there. All the things that you think you can get away with, we've tried too. And at the end of the day is, you can't run away from this disease. You gotta meet it head on. And I think Archway gives those kids a great opportunity to do that. Because, I tell people about Archway, and I said, think about being 16 years old, having a terrible addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs, and having to hear, "Oh, you're a drug addict or you're an alcoholic, and this is the way your life is gonna look for the rest of your life." That is terrifying. But if you're in it with a whole bunch of other people going through the same thing, it's our best opportunity.
Yeah, and I think about the parents too, right? The ones that are sitting there with their children and not knowing what to do, and feeling powerlessness and losing control over the thing they love the most.
Right, and you send them to, say, somewhere for 3 months. Okay, I tell people this all the time. Rehab, I've been to 2. Rehab is the easiest thing in the entire world. Coming out and living life is the hard part. But Archway, we have a school that you go to school, you do all the classes, and you got a whole day long that you're doing something and understanding that everybody's in the same boat. And the parents, that's such a better option than to send the kid away. Because what happens when he comes back? He's still gonna be 16 and a half. So what do you do then? Well, you send him to Archway before you even do that. Give the kid an opportunity to be a normal kid. Because I've seen kids go to 10 rehabs by the time they're 18. Let's let them try and be a normal kid. As hard as this is, let them try to be a normal kid. See what we can do with you.
Yeah, the love from the teachers, the love from the other kids. I mean, you saw it was the same thing around when we were there for the Archway board retreat, to watch those kids
hugging each other,
love each other,
hugging on each other. I mean, I can't tell you what an impact Archway has made on me and how this thing is run with Sasha and the board, how much they care. I mean, teachers care, I get it, and I understand all that. But when you go through something like this with a kid that has this, it's really it's a life or death thing. Like I said, 65 ran across. Could have been 65 that actually succeeded. That's frightening.
Love you, Jeff. I'm proud of you.
You too. Appreciate it, brother.
It was a great job today.
Okay,
Thanks for joining us. So one of the things I just want to hear about a little bit more on the baseball side is just what are the favorite dugout memories, the memories you have of teammates?
I think I was not. If anybody's watched me play, I'm not like the kids today, jump around and all that. Like, because the older guys would say that, well, you're going to get either beat up or hit in the head or whatever. So the funniest thing for me is to watch Craig Biggio with all his things that he had to do in order to get a hit. Like, he thinks that it actually matters. He's the superstitious person I've ever seen in my entire life. And to watch him go through his program on the bench where he moves his hat, puts his gum in a certain place, and I'm like, dude, that has nothing to do with you getting a hit or not. But he was like that fixated. So that was entertaining to watch that. I think, but you know, the thing about baseball, and you know, when you talked about earlier about, I just wanted to be a good teammate. That's what you miss in the game, is the guys hanging around, having the banter, being in the locker room, talking, making fun of people and all those kind of stuff. Just the interaction with people that I've been around cultures that I've never seen before, and now I'm versed in them. And it makes it very enjoyable. So anything that kind of goes on, but my day was a little bit different than today's day. What fans see now, you didn't do back then.
You get one in the head.
Yeah, you got guys on top step, almost on the field after home runs and stuff. That would not happen back then. But after the 17 World Series, when the Dodgers and us were going back and forth and everybody was on the field, I kind of relaxed my opinion of it. It was kind of entertaining.
Yeah. What about, and I think about the frenemies, right? Like, I look over your shoulder and we're here in your gym and I see a Pujols jersey and I walked down, I was like, how dare you? Right? Like,
yeah, but remember I told you earlier, though, I appreciate greatness. Yeah. And Albert, to me, I don't care what they say, he's the best right-hander hitter of all time. Wow. And he's a good person. And so I love Albert. But not when I play against him. I don't want to see him at home plate, ever.
Yeah. That's a scary dude right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when like thinking back when you were growing up, I mean, you talked about Yaz and Ted Williams. You know, who did you really model after in baseball?
It would probably be Yaz. I mean, because both of us are the same height. I really don't believe that we were so gifted that it was not easy for either one of us. I changed my stance. Everybody knows what my stance looked like. Yaz used to change his stance all the time. We're always trying to find it. And I like that about that, because we got to do it a different way than others. Ken Griffey Jr. came out of his mother hitting home runs. You know what I mean? It was just easy. Barry Bonds the same way. For us, it was a little harder. That's why I kind of gravitated towards Yaz.
And what's amazing is your numbers ended up really close to him at the end of the day. To
have 3 more home runs than I did.
Yeah.
But that's okay with me.
Yeah. You can leave him on that path. So have you had to sit down with him? Have you had the experience?
I've met him in '94. I met him at a card show, and then he called me when I got in the Hall of Fame, because he doesn't go to the Hall of Fame. He don't like a lot of people. Not because he doesn't like people, but he just doesn't like all that. But that was a big thrill too.
Yeah, and I'm an old time baseball fan. That's I love the Mickey Mantles, Joe DiMaggio's. I mean, I grew up in Texas, but for some reason ended up with the old Yankees guys. Sorry.
That's all right. That really is taboo. You said something about Pujols, being a Yankee fan.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've gotten experience meeting those guys. I mean, anybody else that's really just kind of influenced you or touched you, in your career, from those old time baseball guys?
We talked about Yaz. I mean, Mantle he's kind of like that folk thing. Like, he'd hit you 3 home runs in a game, might strike out 3 home runs in a game, and then run around New York City the entire night. I mean, there was something about Mickey. I don't know that much about DiMaggio. I know a ton about Williams. But once again, I just appreciate good players. I liked the way they played baseball back then. It was just a different type of baseball. The athletes today there's no doubt they're bigger and stronger. but they went about it differently, where it was, you know, you talk about having fun. And that's the way I played. I didn't have fun playing baseball. When I got between the lines, it was a job. I would do anything I can to win a baseball game. So I don't know that feeling of getting to second base and doing all this stuff and all that. Because the next at bat, I could strike out. So I mean, I'm really not going to celebrate all that if I'm not going to celebrate a strikeout either. So that's just the way I played, and I think guys back then played like that. Not saying the guys don't now, but they're just a different generation.
And you worked so hard to keep going. I mean, with your shoulder
Yeah,
and
it
the
was a
end.
challenge.
And what was that like? I mean,
It was horrible.
Yeah.
Baseball was not fun anymore. But I knew I was better than most, still being out there. But to actually throw a baseball was excruciating. How many shots that I had to have to play. You know, to actually look down at my hand with the ball and go, oh, I got to throw this thing. That's how bad it hurt. And I did it for 3.5 years until I couldn't do it no more. That's all I had. I gave it everything I can. And I mean, do I wish I went out like that? No, but I can't control that.